at-home learning series for literacy. Today's lesson is for all our third graders out there, although all children are welcome to tune in. This lesson is the third in our series. If you didn't see our previous lessons, you can find it on the TN Department of Education website at www.tn.gov/education. My name is Miss Copeland, and I'm a third grade teacher at Venus Stewart Elementary in Gallatin, Tennessee. I am so excited to be your teacher for this lesson. Welcome to my classroom. I am missing the students in my own classroom. Every day I want to share a note with one student. Today's note is for Donna. Donna, I miss seeing you every day. I miss seeing you working so hard in class and how you put forth your best effort. I can't wait to see your beautiful smile again. From Miss Copeland. Through the story we've been reading, we have learned about the literary tool of perspective. Remember, perspective is how someone sees or experiences something, and we can determine a character's perspective by their actions and by their words, their dialogue. Remember, we had said yesterday that dialogue was the words that the character is saying out loud. And we can tell when there is dialogue in a story because the words the character is saying aloud have quotation marks before the words they're saying aloud and after. And there's also a dialogue tag that tells who is speaking. There's also a literary tool of narration. Narration is when the narrator is telling us a part of the story, but there is not dialogue, so there are not quotation marks, but the narrator is telling us something about what is happening in the story with the characters. Those of you that were able to be with us last time, I asked you to think about this question: how do rat and mole demonstrate friendship? I also asked you to make a T-chart where you listed things each character had said or done so far that demonstrates friendship. Pull out your chart. See if you listed the same things that I was thinking. So for those, or put in check if you have the same things that I had. Here's what I had thought. For Rat, he took Mole on a boat ride and a picnic. He introduces Mole to his friends. He doesn't get angry when Mole overturns the boat, and he invites Mole to his home. For Mole, the things that he did to demonstrate friendship, he was a nice companion on the river. He packed up the picnic basket for Rat. He grabs the oars from Rat. That actually was something I thought that would not demonstrate friendship. I'll put an X beside that. And he was grateful for Mole's forgiveness. Let's think about some of the plot or events from the previous read-alouds. So Mole grows weary of spring cleaning and leaves his burrow to go above ground. He meanders along the river and meets Water Rat. Water Rat tells Mole about life on the river as Rat rows along the river. Mole and Rat go boating and have a picnic. They meet Otter and see Badger and Toad. Mole overturns the boat, and then Mole stays with Rat. Over the next few days, we will be learning about the central messages in The Wind in the Willows. You may have already studied about the central messages from other texts. A central message is a broad idea that comes up many times in a story. And I have told my students that a central message is a moral or lesson that the character learns and that you can learn from the text. Central messages are like part of fiction writing, like characters, setting, and plot, which the author uses to help guide the story. There are many recurring central messages in The Wind in the Willows. This means that the messages repeat again and again in the story. Could you think of any evidence to support the central message that friends forgive each other so far in The Wind in the Willows? It makes me think of the time when Rat rescues Mole from the river and then forgives Mole for overturning his boat. Rat lets bygones be bygones. As we read today, we will be thinking about what other central messages we can find. Today's chapter is The Open Road. Let's preview these vocabulary words that will be found in the text that we are about to read. The first word is cautiously. What is that word? Cautiously. Cautiously is an adverb. Cautiously means to act in a way to avoid a problem or danger. Here is an example of that word in a sentence. The father drove cautiously in the rain. The next word is splendid. What's the word? Splendid. Splendid is an adjective or describing word. Splendid means wonderful and very impressive. Here is an example of how to use it in a sentence. The room looks splendid with all the flowers and decorations. And the final word is diplomatically. What's that word? Diplomatically is an adverb. It means dealing with others in a way to achieve peace or to have peace. Here is an example of how to use this word in a sentence. She diplomatically responded to her friend to avoid getting in a disagreement. All right, we're going to begin our story today. This section of the story is called The Open Road. Remember, we're thinking today about central message. So what moral or lesson is the character learning based on what's happening in the story? Ratty, said the mole suddenly one bright summer morning, I want to ask you a favor. The rat was sitting on the riverbank singing a little song called Duck's Ditty that he had just composed or written. All along the backwater, through the rushes tall, ducks are a-dabbling, up tails all. Ducks' tails, drakes' tails, yellow feet a-quiver, yellow bills all out of sight, busy in the river. Everyone for what he likes, we like to be, heads down, tails up, dabbling free. I don't know if I like that song, Rat, said the mole cautiously. Nor do the ducks, replied the rat. Ratty, the mole began again, what I wanted to ask was, won't you take me to call on or visit Mr. Toad? I've heard so much about him. Why, certainly, said the good-natured rat. Get the boat out. It's never the wrong time to call on Toad. He must be a very nice animal, observed the mole, as he got into the boat and took the sculls. He is indeed the best of animals, replied Rat, as they set off to visit the distinguished Mr. Toad. Before long, as they were rounding a bend in the river, they came in sight of an elegant, old red brick house with well-kept lawns reaching down to the water's edge. There's Toad Hall, said the rat, and the creek on the left, where the notice board says private, leads to his boathouse, where we'll leave the boat. The stables are over there to the right. That's the banqueting hall you're looking at now. Toad is rich, you know. Let's pause our story for a moment. Take a second to think about what you may have learned about Toad through the dialogue between Mole and Rat. Jot your notes on your Toad paper. So I have mine from yesterday. What can you add about Toad based on what we just read? Pause the video if you need more time to think. A couple of things I would add to my papers are Toad is rich, nice, and welcoming. And I could also add that Rat is good-natured. What season is the story in now? You're right, summer. What does that tell us about Rat and Mole's friendship? Because the story started in spring and now it is summer, I know they have been friends for a while now. Remember yesterday when Mole turned over the boat and Rat said, "Let bygones be bygones," instead of getting angry with Mole? How might the events have been different if Rat had reacted differently? They glided up the creek and into the shadow of a large boathouse. There they disembarked, or got off, and went in search of Toad. They found Toad resting in a wicker garden chair with a large map spread out on his knees. "Hooray!" he cried, jumping up on seeing them. "This is splendid." He shook the paws of both of them warmly. "I was just going to send a boat down the river for you, Ratty. I need your help," said Toad. "It's about your rowing, I suppose," said the Rat. "Oh, pooh, boating," interrupted the Toad. "I've given that up. Now come with me, dear friends. I have something to show you." Let's pause our story for a moment. Take a second to think about what you may have learned about Toad through the dialogue between Mole and Rat. Jot your notes on your Toad paper. You could also add anything new to your Mole or Rat papers. Pause the video if you need more time to think. I noticed through dialogue that Toad is happy to see Mole and Rat, which makes him welcoming, and that Toad has given up boating, which we had said previously that he's always going from one thing to the next, so he has given up on boating. He led the way to the stable yard, and there they saw a gypsy caravan, or a line of traveling people, shining with newness and painted a canary yellow and green. "There you are," cried the Toad. "There's real life for you. The open road, the dusty highway. This is the very finest cart of its sort. Come inside and take a look." The Mole was tremendously excited and followed him eagerly up the steps and into the caravan. The Rat refused to follow. It was indeed very compact and comfortable. There were sleeping bunks, a little table that folded up, a cooking stove, a bird cage with a bird in it, and a variety of pots and pans. "All complete," said the Toad triumphantly, pulling open a cupboard to reveal a variety of tasty treats. "We are ready to set off this afternoon." "I beg your pardon," said the Rat slowly, "but did I overhear you say something about 'we' and 'set off' and 'this afternoon'?" "Now, Ratty," said Toad, "don't begin talking in that sniffy sort of way. I can't manage without you. You surely don't mean to stick to your dull old river all your life." "I'm not coming," said the Rat, "and I am going to stick to my old river. And what's more, Mole is going to stick to me, aren't you, Mole?" "Of course I am," said the Mole loyally. "All the same, it sounds as if it might have been fun," he added wistfully. Let's pause our story. Think about what just happened here. Rat speaks for Mole when he tells Toad, "Mole's going to stick to me." Why would Rat say that? I think Rat would say that because the author has demonstrated through dialogue and through the narration that Rat and Mole are friends, and friends stick together. Let's look back at a section of the text. Mole says, "Of course I am," said Mole loyally. "All the same, it sounds as if it might have been fun," he added wistfully. Does Mole respond the way Rat thought he would? The author uses a word to describe the way Mole responds. He says he responds loyally. Why would the author choose to add this word and not just say, "said the Mole"? Adding the words loyally and wistfully lets the reader know how Mole responds. It gives more detail. Let's continue reading. The rat saw that the mole was disappointed. He hated disappointing people. Toad was watching both of them closely. "Come along in and have some lunch," he said diplomatically, "and we'll talk it over. We needn't decide anything in a hurry." During luncheon, Toad spoke enthusiastically of the joys of the open road. So much so that the mole could hardly sit still in his chair. Before long, unable to disappoint his friends, the rat had agreed to go. Let's pause and think. How do rat and mole each demonstrate loyalty to each other? Jot your ideas on a piece of paper. I notice that mole is loyal to rat when he agrees with rat. Rat doesn't like to disappoint his friends and agrees to go even though he doesn't want to go. When they were ready, Toad led his companions to the paddock or small field to capture the old gray horse. For his part, the old gray horse did not want to be captured. Eventually, though, the horse was caught and harnessed, and they set off. It was a golden afternoon. The smell of the dust they kicked up was rich and satisfying. Late in the evening, they drew up on a remote common, which is a piece of land owned by many people and open to the community, turned the horse loose to graze, and ate their simple supper sitting on the grass. At last, they turned into their little bunks in the cart. Toad sleepily said, "Well, good night, you fellows. This is the real life for a gentleman." After so much open air, the toad slept very soundly, and no amount of shaking could rouse him the next morning. So the mole and rat set to work. The rat saw to the horse and lit a fire, while the mole trudged off to the nearest village for milk and eggs. The hard work had all been done by the time Toad appeared. They had a pleasant ramble that day along the narrow bylanes and camped as before on a common. This time, the two guests made sure that Toad did his fair share of the work. As a result, when the time came for starting next morning, Toad was no longer singing the praises of the open road. Their way lay, as before, along narrow country lanes, and it was not till the afternoon that they encountered their first main road. There, disaster struck. For as they strolled and chatted, from far behind them an unfamiliar sound could be heard. Glancing back, they saw a small cloud of dust advancing on them. From out of the dust, a faint pop-up sounded. Ignoring this strange vision, they turned to resume their conversation. Then, in an instant, the peaceful scene was changed. A blast of wind and a whirl of sound caused them to jump out of the road. The pop-up sound rang out once more. Let's pause for a second. Do you remember what an onomatopoeia was? Like sploosh, pop-up is another example of this technique. Take a moment to think about what you may have learned about toad, mole, and rat. Jot your thoughts on your character papers. Remember, we're thinking about the characters' thoughts, words, or actions and what that shows about them. And you can pause the video if you need more time to think. As this sound rang out, they glimpsed a magnificent motor car with its pilot hugging the wheel. This splendid vehicle flung a cloud of dust in their direction and then was gone. At the sight and sound of this vehicle, the old gray horse reared and backed towards a ditch. Before long, the canary yellow and green colored cart lay on its side. The rat danced up and down in the road. "You villains!" he shouted, shaking both fists. While Rat was shaking his fists, the toad sat straight down in the middle of the dusty road and muttered, "Pup." For his part, the mole was busy trying to quiet the horse. Then when he Then he went to look at the cart on its side in the ditch. The rat came to help him, but to no avail. "Hi, Toad!" they cried. "Come and help us!" The toad did not reply, so they went to see what was the matter. They found him in a sort of a trance, his eyes still fixed on the dusty road. The rat shook him. "Are you coming to help us, Toad?" he demanded. "Wonderful sight," murmured Toad. "A real way to travel." "Oh, stop being a fool, Toad," cried the mole. "And to think I never knew," continued the toad. "But now that I do, what dust cloud shall soon spring up behind me." "What are we to do with him?" asked the mole of the rat. "Nothing at all," replied the rat firmly. "You see, I know him too well. He is now possessed. Never mind him. Let's go and see what there is to be done about the cart." A careful inspection showed them that the cart was in a hopeless state. The rat knotted the horse's reins over his back and took him by the head, carrying the birdcage in the other hand. "Come on," he said grimly to the mole. "It's 5 or 6 miles to the nearest town, and we shall just have to walk." "But what about Toad?" asked the mole anxiously. "Oh, bother Toad," said the rat. I'm done with him." How are mole and rat demonstrating responsibility? What in the text leads you to a central message? I think a central message here is that you should take responsibility for your actions. Mole and rat realize that they need to take care of the wreck. They had not proceeded very far on their way, however, when there was a pattering of feet behind them, and Toad caught up. "Now, look here, Toad," said the rat sharply. "As soon as we get to the town, you'll have to go straight to the police station and lodge a complaint. And then you'll have to make arrangements to have the cart mended." "Police station? Complaint?" murmured the toad. "Me? Complain of that heavenly vision that has saved me? Mend the cart? I'm done with carts forever." The rat turned from him in despair. "You see," he said to the mole, addressing him across Toad's head, "he's quite hopeless." On reaching the town, they left the horse at a stable and gave what directions they could about the cart. They went home by train and escorted Toad to his house. Then they got out their boat from the boathouse and set off for home. The following evening, the mole was sitting on the bank fishing when the rat, who had been chatting to friends, came strolling along to find him. "Heard the news?" he said. "Toad went up to town and ordered a large and very expensive motor car." Let's think together. What central messages did you hear in today's read aloud? And how did the characters demonstrate the central message? Take a minute to jot your ideas down on paper. Here are ones that I thought about. First, I thought about friends are loyal to each other. In the text, Rat takes Mole to call on Toad, and Rat agrees to travel with Toad because he worries about Toad traveling on his own, and he doesn't want to disappoint Toad. So one we might have said is that friends are loyal or friends stick together. Another central message I am seeing might be take responsibility for your actions. Rat and Mole take care of the work on the trip. Rat and Mole take care of the wrecked caravan, the horse and the toad after the car incident. Compare and contrast Toad's reaction with Mole and Rat's after they all see the motor car and the caravan wrecks. How do their reactions to the wreck contribute to what happens next? Say your thoughts aloud. When I thought about the characters' reactions, Toad's state is dreamlike, spellbound, and fascinated. He's possessed and practically in a trance, and isn't even worried or upset about the state of the wrecked caravan. Toad seems ready to walk away from the wreck without doing anything about it. Rat and Mole are upset, frustrated, and angry at Toad because he doesn't seem to care about the wreck the motorcar has made of his caravan, or how their trip is ruined. Rat and Mole feel a sense of responsibility to take care of the horse and the wrecked caravan, as well as to help take care of Toad. Toad behaves in an irresponsible way and doesn't seem to care. For today's task, choose one of the following events in the story. Either Mole flipping the boat, Mole and Rat's decision to go with Toad, or the reactions of the characters to the wreck. And then also choose one of the central messages in the story. Either friends are loyal, or take responsibility for your actions. After you've chosen, I want you to rewrite the event with narration and dialogue demonstrating how the sequence of events would be different if the character did not demonstrate that central message. Either friends are loyal or taking responsibility for your actions. For example, if Mole and Rat had not been loyal, what would have happened in the story instead? Boys and girls, I enjoyed reading with you today. Thank you for inviting me into your homes. I look forward to seeing you in our next lesson in Tennessee's At Home Learning Series. Goodbye, and I will see you tomorrow.